Welcome to Inside Winnipeg Politics. I'm Kevin Klein, joined by two Winnipeg Sun columnists. I'm Kevin Klein, joined by two Winnipeg Sun columnists, Jeff Currier and Royce Koop, who is a professor of political science at the University of Manitoba. And this segment is all about you, Royce. You had mentioned something that Pierre Poilievre brought up that actually got me super excited because it's something that I've been saying for a long time and been writing about in the Winnipeg Sun, quite frankly. So why don't you paint the picture for us?
Yeah, so everyone is talking about this interview that Jordan Peterson did with Pierre Poilievre. It's got a huge amount of views on Twitter, and it's been broken up into clips. And so one of those clips is Peterson and Poilievre talking about Canadian identity. And so Poilievre makes the point that he doesn't believe in the idea of hyphenated Canadians. We should get rid of hyphens, emphasize Canadian for everyone. Everyone is a Canadian, is a Canadian. And he talked about implications of this for people that immigrate to Canada. He doesn't want people to be seen as, for example, Indo-Canadians. They wants to get rid of them to say that everyone is a Canadian. There's a long history of this view in Canada. Of course, our Prime Minister Diefenbaker was the most effective proponent of this view of unhyphenated Canadianism. And it's a real contrast to what we see in a country that doesn't have a national identity. We're a post-national country. Poilievre is staking a very clear position in opposition to this. And I think it's interesting. Trudeau is so low in the polls that it would be easy for the Conservatives, easy for Poilievre to just coast. But he's not doing that. He's actually staking real positions. He's taking positions that some will see as controversial, and I think that it's great that he's taking positions that clearly contrast himself with Trudeau, and this one is a really interesting one, I think.
Yeah, Kevin, we're starting to see some pushback against the idea of the post-national country that we don't have any real core. There is no core identity as Canadians. That the only thing that binds us is socialized medicine, and that we don't really have any kind of an identity, and there's no such thing as a real Canadian or whatever that is. And I think there's enough pushback now, and we're seeing that. We're seeing it at the corporate level, pushback against the DEI, the woke stuff, because it's created a tribalism in Canada, and we've always had a multi-ethnic society in Canada. We all get that, and we've all celebrated that. Most of, a lot of people in Canada, and certainly all of our ancestors, save for the First Nations, all came here. Maybe it was 50 years ago, maybe it was 200 years ago or 300 years ago, but our ancestors came from someplace else. So we all get the idea of a multi-ethnic society. I mean, I think we all we get that. What's happened, though, in recent years with this notion of the post-national concept is that we've become increasingly tribal, and we've become an increasingly fractured society. And so we're no longer a mosaic, but we're fractured. And we still have a country, but I don't know if we still have a nation. And there is a distinction to be made between those two.
And I think you're right. When I talk to Americans, they're Americans. Well, sometimes Americans, but they're Americans, right? They are proud to be American. We've seen a recent poll by Angus Reid that said, only 34% of Canadians are proud to be Canadian. 34%. And it makes me think, well, when somebody says to me, well, what does it mean to be Canadian?
Well, okay, Kevin, let me just jump in here, because there has been a movement, and academia and media have plenty of blood on their hands because they have driven this to a huge extent, that there is this unspoken notion that Canada was a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was a bad idea.
No. And I don't think we have to
and
apologize.
Neither do the millions of people all over the world trying to get here.
Yeah. And we don't have to apologize for being Canadian. We're Canadian. And I think we need to be proud of being Canadian. But I think that begs the question, though. If you say to a young person in our school system right now, what does it mean to be Canadian? But they are dividing people by, yes, you're an Indo-Canadian, you're this Canadian, you're that Canadian, you're just Canadian. We are Canadian. And I think that I struggle right now. I struggle a lot to be able to answer the question, What does it mean to be Canadian? I mean, after the World Juniors, it's certainly not hockey anymore. We were out that. We're down the list on that one. But I mean, we really don't, we're struggling with that because you can't say we're the friendliest nation anymore because we're not. We have riots
Yeah.
in the street. We have protests going on in the streets. We have swastikas being painted on playgrounds right here in Winnipeg. Like, what happened? We are not Canadian anymore, and maybe removing that hyphen will allow us to become Canadian again because I struggle. What makes us Canadian?
I mean, we've had debates about national identity for a long time in this country, and that's a great thing. We should discuss that. We should talk about it. We should disagree. I think what's been very poisonous is the post-national state. This is something that has been around, and if you ever say, "Well, I don't like that. I'm uncomfortable with that," the response was, "Well, are you opposed to multiculturalism? Are you opposed to immigration?" Well, no. I mean, as Jeff said, this is a multi-ethnic country. We recognize that. But even a country that's very diverse needs some sort of identity, something for people to identify with, something for people to be proud of, something for people to pledge allegiance to. And the post-national conception of Canada, it's just objectively wrong, but I think it's also harmful. It's deprived people of an identity that they can be proud of. And yeah, I would like to get back to that kind of thing.
Well,
Well,
we're good at self-flagellation in this country. Going back to the Dublin inquiry after the Ben Johnson scandal, we've been beating ourselves up ever since. Hey, and truth and reconciliation, I think most Canadians understand that this is an important thing to tackle.
yeah.
But it does not mean that Canada as a concept was a bad idea. Yeah, there are sins that need to be corrected, and there is reconciliation that needs to happen. But this is one of the great examples of what a multi-ethnic society can become if there are some core values and core identities. And as both of you guys have pointed out, and we seem to be embarrassed about those things. We're not proud of those things anymore. And it's going to take a while to get that turned around because you have to get into the heads of academia and the heads of Canadian media
Yeah.
in order to change that, because that's a battleship that's going to need turning around. It's not going to happen quickly.
So, Royce, what I'm hearing is it starts with you.
It's all your fault,
Yeah.
Royce.
I got that as I got that as well. I think it's beautifully put, Jeff. And of course, some of the most patriotic Canadians, when you go out to these Canada Day celebrations, you look out at the crowd and it's pretty clear. Like there are all sorts of ethnicities, recent immigrant. Those are the people with the maple leaf hats on and the flags. And so, I think there's a real hunger for someone to express identity, something to be proud of in Canada. And we've talked about this before, Kevin. I'm really optimistic about this moving forward.
Good. We'll leave it there, guys. Thank you very much.